Hey, good morning. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, coming to you from the podcast layer, joined by my producer, Phil Ville.
Hey, everybody.
And I've also got a friend in here, sometimes against my better judgment. You know why? I make interesting choices. I am joined by the leader of the Great American Freedom Revival.
Hello.
He is known as Everybody Loves Ted. Welcome.
That. Except for those that don't.
Well, we haven't found any yet, is the thing.
Oh, give us time.
Well, you do tend to piss off certain categories of people, but it's not that they don't hate you. They're just like, oh, really?
It's a gift.
It seems to be.
Oh, goodness. Welcome. Thank you for having me.
You guys must be friends outside of here, right? Because
I'm hoping, because otherwise we must be brothers.
Hey,
We
you
are
can tell
brothers
the type
from
of
a
friends
different
you are
mother.
by the way you just take jabs at each other. I love it.
Well, we're starting to sound a little like delusions.
Oh, okay.
Not quite the same pace, though.
Yeah, okay. If you want to get that fast, you get that fast.
I don't think I can handle that.
Little herding cats, I know.
Yep.
Mm.
No, herding wet, angry cats.
Yes.
So, Ted actually does something that I consider important. I'm on his committee. It is called the Great American Freedom Revival. And it's about returning us to our roots, understanding the things that America got right, why we became the most successful country in the world. And part of that is our Constitution. But before that became God.
Yeah.
So this is bringing the two together.
Mm-hmm.
I am so glad that some pastors are starting to wake up and teach biblical values, because there's all kinds of places where the Bible talks about, taxation. It talks about government. It talks about free will.
It covers everything.
Yep.
Basically, if you're willing to look and listen. And the beauty of our Constitution, the way it was started and imagined by our founders, is that they themselves were rooted in their Christian faith. So they wanted the Constitution to spell out what a Christian nation would look like.
Well, and a lot of people now seem to believe that, only most of our founding fathers were actually Christian. And every bit of evidence I've looked at, that's not the case. Possibly Franklin was a deist when he was young, but by the time he was an old man, look at his writings. He had found his faith.
Yep.
Possibly there were some deist tendencies with Thomas Jefferson, but again, by the time he was an older man, he published a book that talked about the Bible, and they try to make it seem like that book was limiting the Bible. No, these were kind of the things he considered the most important. He wanted to make sure that everybody read through this. It's not that they didn't he didn't want them to read the whole thing. And then there's a whole lot of writings that talk about our founders saying, hey, we will not make it without being a just and moral people, that this Constitution requires us to be just and moral.
It's the only way. That's why when we see liberals, I like to put them all together, the liberal, progressive, Marxist group.
They like each other at the very least.
They put up with each other. But they...
well, there's hope for the liberal, but after that, oof. Look at Bill Maher occasionally does something sensible.
Yeah, well,
occasionally.
Even a broken clock is right twice a day. So
he's been doing a little better than that. He's probably hitting right 3 or 4 times a day.
Wow, that's a better broken clock.
Yeah.
But a liberal, by definition, bases their ideology on how they feel. So it's very whimsical. It could be one thing one year and another thing on another year. It's not rooted in, as the dictionary says, it's not rooted in traditional thinking or orthodox. So it can change at any time. And unfortunately, that's what happens. But that's why our founding fathers said that the Constitution, which is based on laws and truisms, has no place for anything other than a people who are moral and religious, who base their life on orthodoxy and tradition and the rule of law.
But that confuses me. That would mean that truth isn't subjective? What if I have a different truth than you?
You might, and you'll be wrong. There's one truth, and then there's everyone else's idea. But your idea doesn't mean it's truth. There's one.
So it's not a line in the sand; it's an actual line.
It's a line. It's
because a line in the sand can, a little wind or a little water, and
it's gone.
It's
right.
gone.
Yeah. Well, that's the liberal mindset. But unfortunately, we've given them too much power over the years. And as you see, the liberal progressive movement, it goes towards socialism and communism. That's the natural flow of emotion and thought. That higher self-thinking ends up in socialism, because
which is a small step from communism.
It's
a tiny little.
It's like a baby step, right?
Yeah.
But it's the educated academic elite that look down on everyone else because they don't know as much as they do. So because they're so smart, they can dictate governance and the way things should be, which is why they hate the Constitution, because it says, no, you can't.
Agreed. It's almost as if Reagan was right when he said, my friend on the left knows so much, but so much of it's not true. I didn't get that quote right.
You didn't, but that's okay. But he also said, if fascism ever comes to America, it will come in the form of liberalism. Yeah. And then he called them out. And he said, it's not that our liberal friends are ignorant. They just know so much that isn't so.
Thank you. You got it right.
Reagan was awesome.
Right now, there's a rise of socialism. You look at Portland, you look at Seattle, you look at New York. They're run by socialist, if not actually communists, that seem to believe in the power of government. Matter of fact, that particular socialist communist, Moron Mondami, he talked about the warm embrace of collectivism.
Right.
There's some problem with that.
You think?
And one of those would be biblical.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and jump in. The 10th commandment. Basically, in short, don't covet.
Right.
So you're telling me that everybody's willingly going to give up to the government, because the only way to have true socialism is to give the government so much power that it can deal with, there's no problem too small. Again, to quote Mondami. Yeah. So how does that all connect? You're a little bit more of a biblical scholar than I am. I'm just some bub.
Well, a quick, easy way to look at it is when the scripture says, referring to the last days, is that people will be lovers of themselves. It's kind of a broad phrase, but it sums up a lot of things. They love their own thoughts, their own ideas, their own opinions are worth more than anything else. They love what other people have. They love an idea of government that favors them, instead of loving a government that restricts them. So if they think what you say is wrong, and we're already seeing it, they can call it hate speech and want you criminally prosecuted, even though our Constitution says we have a freedom of speech. So it really goes, to me, in my mind, that real basic form of individual people loving themselves rather than loving God and having a moral climate within themselves, a moral compass to direct their thoughts. Loving themselves, lovers of themselves is at the root of that, I believe, if that helps you.
It does. It's almost as if when we look at the non-successful, because there isn't an example of a successful socialist or communist country.
No, there's
Not
not.
unless they turn towards capitalism, which saves them.
Right.
Um,
Which we did too in our founding years.
yes, we can get to that story. But
Okay. One socialist story at a time.
yeah. Basically, my point was that since their idea doesn't work, why are we trying to relearn this? They seem to always believe that, well, now a different person's in charge, and we've branded it as democratic socialism rather than regular old socialism. I had this argument online with some fool that has a Facebook name called Left for the Better World. Left for a Better World.
Yeah.
And all they can ever do is send memes. They can't actually articulate ideas.
No.
And I hope this gets back to them.
Well, we'll do our best. One of the things that I think American leftists have convinced themselves is because they are American, and when Americans do things, we do things better. When we were all fully committed in World War II, we outproduced every other nation in the world combined. That's how great America was. So they figure, well, America's great, so when we do socialism, we'll do it great. But they don't realize that what made America great was the antithesis of socialism. You can't take away the foundation that made it great and think you can now apply that greatness to the very thing that ruins mankind and has a proven track record. So they're delusional.
Yeah. Well, we have a government that is designed to protect our rights. Not to
Right.
take care of us, to protect our rights.
Right. To
And with
protect
it-
our God-given rights.
Amen. And then we have this concept of meritocracy, meaning the most competent, the person who works the hardest,
Right.
sees the most. Wouldn't that also apply to the Bible? Those that are most righteous, that work the hardest.
Yeah. You reap what you sow.
And socialism wants to, well, they don't want to reap. They
No,
just want to.
they-
They just want to harvest.
Well, they want to reap what we sow.
Yes.
So they're trying to twist the principle because they want to be like God. So that's how you know who's behind, what spirit is behind socialism. The Antichrist.
Yeah. Even if they're, I would venture to say the majority of people that are believing in socialism, that might be the spirit that moves them, but they're useful idiots, as opposed to necessarily being informed.
Yeah.
The nice part is there's still hope.
There's always hope, and we'll get to that because we always do here at the podcast lair.
We always do.
We always do.
So there's a fun little story about our founding, which you alluded to,
Okay.
about when the colonists first came over. We were not actually American. They were the first Europeans to establish a real colony. I get that there's some argument that some of the Vikings came over earlier, but they didn't really establish a colony
No.
that
yeah,
survived.
they didn't.
And it had to do with how they approached the economy, what they chose to do, and how it was an abysmal failure. You want to tell that story?
Well, there's two different ones. There's Jamestown did it and pushed it a lot farther than Plymouth Rock. But the Plymouth Rock story is better, and it's more fully recorded in Governor Bradford's diary. He talked about the great idea of having everything for everybody. So they'd bring everything into the storehouse so it can be distributed to everybody. That's socialism. But soon, human nature kicked in and found out that, I can get the same amount for not working as hard. So then they started to see that carry out where there are many who were able-bodied would not work.
Well, because they knew, one, they could get their stuff without working, but
Right.
two, they resented the people that didn't do anything.
Yeah, there was resentment there. So when they changed it and went back to what we would call more of the private enterprise style, so everybody had their own lot and was required to work themselves. And when they did that, they ended up producing way more than they ever did when they did it collectively. and
because
had,
people were fighting for their own benefit
Right.
and the benefit of their family.
and then they could barter and trade and sell, and it took off. So yeah, we had to learn the hard way, but it's clearly recorded. We tried it, it didn't work. Next.
Yeah.
We don't have to go back. We crossed that one off already.
Some of us crossed it off. Unfortunately, there seems to be within the Democratic Party a strong number of people that did cross it off, that they believe, no, capitalism's just greedy. Well,
Yeah.
it can be,
Right.
especially if it's crony capitalism, especially if we allow for monopolies. Google would be a huge one.
Yeah. Well, greed is a human characteristic. So it
should be channeled.
at best we can, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you think you can be socialistic and eliminate greed, you're a fool, because the greed just gets run by people in the government and people who own big businesses, and they all work together and chummy up, because we see that all around the world.
And regardless of party, that happens.
Exactly. So
That's
if you think you're
basically the start of the deep state.
Yeah. You can't eliminate greed just because you think you go to socialism and that's going to take care of it. No, it just makes everybody poor.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't elevate everybody. It just flattens everybody.
Well, those that are truly motivated, because I'm going to say something really controversial now. We have different gifts.
Yes.
People have a different level of drive. They have a different emotional stability. They have different people skills. They have different intelligences.
Yeah. Some of us are better looking. Right.
Sorry, Ted.
I
Oh, that's
tried.
not what you meant.
Us, not necessarily myself.
Yeah. So if people aren't equal,
Right.
the only way that we can be equal is in the eyes of God, in the eyes of government. And we seem to have created both of those things through our Constitution and through our faith. So it's not that one life is more valuable. We need equality of opportunity, not equality of results.
Correct. That's where we get wrong in the semantics.
Well, they want equity, which is same results for everybody. It is the cornerstone of what I consider to be a racist idea called diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Well, do you remember being a student way back, grade school, and
It's going to take a couple minutes for me to go that
yeah,
far back.
so if it goes through the files. I can remember striving to be one of the better students. I wanted more stars on next to my name. I wanted to have completed more things. Well, the socialistic mindset is, instead of striving to be better, we complain that we're not as good as the other ones and think that they should eliminate some of their things and give to me so that we can be equal. Instead of, look, we all have the same opportunity to make something happen. I can read more and practice my stuff and be a good student, or I can complain and because Johnny's smarter than me, and so then what socialism does is punishes Johnny to reward me, who's not as good.
It ends up being a race to the bottom because Johnny goes,
Yeah.
I'm not going to work hard
Yep.
for somebody else's grade. I watched a college professor.
Exactly.
They just did a little 3-minute reel on this. And they decided for this particular class, for this period of time, that they were going to deal with all grades in a socialist way. So they just averaged everybody's grades.
Yeah.
And on the first test, everybody got a B. And then on the second test, those that were bringing up the average realized they didn't, there's no need to try.
Right.
And those that were doing nothing did even less. Maybe they were getting a D and now they're getting an F. And on the second test, everybody got a D.
Imagine that.
And on the third test, we'd found all this equality of results, and even the students in the middle were just like, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Like, the lazy people aren't going to do anything. The people that would have excelled in the class, they're not doing anything. And everybody stopped trying. It was a race to the bottom, or
Right.
it took us to a place of poverty. And this college professor was kind of shocked and said, this is the first class in teaching for over 20 years where the whole class failed with this experiment. Everybody got an F.
I'm pretty sure you keep doing that, and it's going to end up being the same.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I study a lot of World War II history, and you know, I've been writing about it a lot. And one of the things,
where would we find those writings, my friend?
Wow, we could find those writings at www.revivalusa.net.
Might be a good idea to go check that out.
Lots of articles there to stimulate your brain and stir the gift inside you. Have a love for our country. Like, wow, we had some great stories.
I thought patriotism was bad.
To socialists.
Oh, okay.
But we're coming against the socialists today. One of the things that stands out is how we took on a socialist nation and humbled them greatly, not just because we were great warriors, because the trained German soldier was very competent and they were very good at what they did, but they didn't have the ability to invent things or do something from a sergeant or corporal level that seemed like, you know, this is the right initiative for this now. Mm-hmm. They would have to go up the chain of command.
So there was always, because there was this control,
yes,
the individual couldn't make or use their experience
right
to make a decision.
Yeah, tank commanders, doesn't matter. No matter where you are in the battlefield, whether you're on the ocean or in the air, everything went to central command, whereas Americans were given more freedom to make judgments and do things. And it was just part of our DNA. It's who we are as a country. And it showed on the battlefield. Our results were incredible. And after action reports and diaries and things that German officers would write about, they were always blown away by how different we responded, because it confused them. It's like, I gotta run this by Hitler, you know, where we didn't have quite that chain of command or that centralized authority. So it showed in our success. So it's worth looking into and studying and realizing that, wow, you know, our American way of life is way better than socialism of any kind.
Well, that idea that the military, that comes from Washington.
Mm-hmm.
In one of the early battles, and I cannot remember the guy that he sent that dared to speak up in front of a bunch of officers, and this guy was not a commissioned officer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not clear whether Washington sent him to get a bunch of cannons that had been abandoned at a fort that was French.
Okay.
But he might have sent him to punish him. He came back with all those cannons, and it, just like multiple times during our Revolutionary War, it was so pivotal and so improbable, you have to wonder if there wasn't a divine spirit helping it all happen.
There's countless stories of that, like the fog that came over the river that allowed Washington's troops to escape. The times that George Washington was on his horse, clearly visible for every enemy combatant, gets shot at and targeted, but never taken down.
By a whole line. But not one guy, right. By a whole line.
Right. Over and over again.
There was one Indian chief that met Washington near his death.
The Bulletproof George story is one of the best.
We don't teach that anymore.
No, we don't. It was for years. Now we want to teach that George Washington was a slave owner. And it's like, okay, all right, if you were born into it, your dad owned slaves, what would you be? I guess you would be a slave owner. You wouldn't know any better.
Yeah.
And yet George fought against it, spoke against it, and because the law allowed it, he released his slaves upon his death. He was anti-slavery, but he was born into it.
Yeah.
So
we almost took care of that slavery problem.
Almost.
We were only a few votes away when they were putting together the Constitution.
Yeah.
And it was just a few votes that stopped us from fixing slavery at our inception. The left will say, well, that is our great sin. Yes, it was. It was absolutely a mistake. But at the same time, you often have to make bad choices when it comes to politics. And we would not have become the country that eventually, by the way, we were in many ways the first to get rid of slavery. And depending on which measure we're looking at, it's either us or England.
Right.
But we're the only country that lost, I forget how many people, 500,000 people during the Civil War? It was something crazy. More than...
I think it was 650,000 or something. It was a lot.
We're the only country that fought a civil war to get rid of slavery.
Right. But remember, too, many of the northern colonies outlawed it.
Mm-hmm.
So we, as a nation, we didn't. It took a while. But most of the northern colonies had already rejected it. In fact, at Plymouth Rock, so we're going all the way back, Plymouth Rock, because Jamestown still didn't allow it either when it initially came to him. That's how that first slave owner went through his 7 years of servitude to pay for the crossing. And then he ended up becoming the first official slave owner, a black man. But in Plymouth Rock, when a ship with slaves landed on their shores, they arrested the crew and set the slaves free, and then at their expense paid for their return trip, which they may have ended up back in slavery. They didn't know, but what they did know is this is wrong, and they arrested the crew who were trying to sell them. That's you don't hear that story too often because all these white guys were just bad, evil, slave owning, Indian killing, everything else.
Well, that's partially true, but I want to point out that was the idea of the First Amendment that has 5 aspects, was that written for everybody? Well, the truth is it wasn't written for everybody at the time, but the idea translates. These freedom ideas that were preached from the pulpit, we eventually fixed those and created more freedom than there is anywhere else in the world. There's a reason why, even with all our warts and problems, people are still fighting. They're changing their whole lives. They're willing to come both legally, and I'm okay with legally, and they're willing to sneak in because they want the opportunity and freedom that's here.
Yeah. And our country obviously is built on immigration. But it's built on legal immigration. It always has been. If you go back to Ellis Island and all, when the Europeans came over, it was all legally done.
Well, first generation Americans that come the right way. I wouldn't say I can say everybody, but I can say that everyone that I have met, they're more thankful.
Right.
They're more in tune with and appreciative of all of those rights that are granted by the Constitution, which were granted first by God. Right. I knew it was coming. I could see it on your face. They tend to be great Americans if they come the right way. They're here to embrace this idea that they can define their own destiny, that through their own hard work, they can have a better life than they ever thought they could. Not everybody can be president.
Right.
But everybody can have a pretty good life here with work, focus,
opportunity.
and opportunity, and a little bit of luck. Though I found that in my life, the best way to find luck is the harder I work, the more luck I seem to have.
I think there's Abraham Lincoln said. Abraham Lincoln said something.
He did talk a lot. There are. He said it 7 years ago. 7 years ago. Luck. No, it's actually Thomas Jefferson that said, "I'm a strong believer in luck. The harder I work, the more of it I seem to have."
Well, and that's very good. That's not the one I was thinking of. But the one I was thinking of is an Abraham Lincoln one, and I'm drawing a blank. And sorry about that.
He was the tall guy.
He was the tall guy.
Way back when you were little.
And he was a dynamic guy. He's worth talking about, too.
Well, he's truly an American success story because he ran and failed and ran and failed and ran and failed and ran and failed. And I could keep doing this for about another minute.
Right, because he did.
And then he went from never being elected to anything that mattered, no statewide position, to President of the United States.
Right.
That's absolutely grabbing possibilities and changing your world through your own work and dedication.
Amen. One of the great aspects of his story is who mentored him. John Quincy Adams, the only president ever to win presidency and then after that run and win and be a congressman. Mm-hmm. And he was the one that was the hellhound of abolition, of slavery, trying to abolish slavery. And he kept putting legislation. They actually silenced him or censored him, I think.
Censored, but yeah.
And but Abraham Lincoln was this young freshman congressman that he took under his wings. And that's where we get that statement, if you remember, because Tim Barton mentioned it when he was here at our Great American Freedom Revival.
Hope we have another one of those soon.
Hopefully have another one of those. And he brought up John Quincy Adams, who was asked how he felt about not seeing the fruit of all his labor, because he had been pushing against slavery for years and years, and he died and never saw the result. But at the time when he was asked, he said, the duty is ours, the results are God's. And it was his influence on Abraham Lincoln that carried the day, even though John Quincy Adams did a lot of the hard work.
Well, he was essentially the founder of the Republican Party.
Abraham Lincoln,
yeah.
Which then was obviously highly
influenced. John Quincy Adams, his dad was the second president.
John Adams.
Mm-hmm. And he used his influence to basically to turn the day.
Yeah.
He wasn't there for all the founding and all the changes, but sometimes it's the person doing the work behind the scenes. And in a lot of ways, he was behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Constantly developing seeds of hope.
Well, and remember when John Adams was asked who the most influential people were, the reporter was expecting to write down Ben Franklin, Benjamin Rush, Thomas Jefferson, names like that. He started naming the reverends and the pastors that had preached for years, that was literally giving in their sermons the foundation for all the writings and the fervor and the zealousness and the very character of the Constitution. He said that those names, so they would have been in the background. Mm-hmm. They weren't known. They weren't talked about.
Or I would add Thomas Paine's Common Sense, because that document changed the culture.
Thomas Paine had he had a very good way of helping motivate people to understand things. But Ben Franklin also told him, don't write this stuff. This is crap. Because Thomas Paine was one of those, if anybody was a deist, it would have been him. But I recently wrote an article and I quoted Thomas Paine because George Washington was using his writing, something that Thomas Paine had written, and George wanted it circulated amongst the troops. So it was very influential when they were, if you remember, the crossing of the Delaware and the advancement into Trenton, where George's great victory at Trenton and then Princeton really solidified his generalship and his tactical skills. It was pretty amazing. It's a great story. Mm-hmm. Crossing the Delaware, though, that was a huge thing. Caught him sleeping. It was great. But he used that Thomas Paine saying. It was the one where he says, "These are the days that try men's souls." And that was kind of how that one started. And forgive me for not remembering the rest of it.
I've read it, but it's been too long for me to remember the rest of it.
I just wrote about it, and I still forget about it. Got too much going through my brain.
Okay, so with all this foundation,
Mm-hmm.
let's move forward to today's time. Biggest issue I think going on right now
Mm-hmm.
is the culture divide, the power divide between what Trump is doing and what establishment and globalists are
Right.
doing. He just invaded a country. Well, he didn't invade the whole country, but he did take out their leader. They're in
Right.
Venezuela.
Right.
That changed things. That
Mhm.
changed things big time. And for my friends on the left that immediately went out and protested that, I'm going to quote John Fetterman here. You know, Democratic senator from Pennsylvania.
Right.
Why did we have a bounty of $25 million on this man if we didn't want him arrested?
Right. Yeah, put a bounty on them and then scream when someone actually takes them out.
Right.
Yeah, the same people that were crying, "No king, we can't have a king," are now screaming that we took out a king.
Mm-hmm.
A person who's the head of a country that ran it into the toilet, that's acting like a king, got rid of the opposition party so they don't have fair elections. That's called a king.
Mm-hmm. And I want to point out that if you look at the Venezuelan people everywhere, they're having party after party.
They're happy.
Because they've been stuck at between $4,000 and $5,000 a year.
Mm.
If we turn it into
Right.
U.S. dollars, we convert
Right.
it, since 2020.
Yeah.
Which at their peak, just a few years before that, before the socialists spent all of other people's money, they were at 15.
Yeah.
So they lost 2/3 of their income, except for the elite rich, the kings.
Correct.
And then they had inflation because it hasn't really been going up
Yeah.
since 2020. Those people need something better.
Yeah. They're a mess.
Now, the reason I bring that up is because the whole power dynamic changed.
Mm-hmm.
Canada, who is largely socialist right now, the one leverage point they had over us is they had oil that we wanted.
Mm. Only because we weren't drilling our own.
Well, yes, but they had that leverage.
Right.
Now they don't have that leverage because all of this Venezuelan oil that was mostly going to China, you think we're going to let that happen now? I don't. Why do you think Taiwan has not been invaded? Now I don't think they dare because they're going to run out of energy. Their energy comes through a couple points. One is from Venezuela, and there's a tight point near Japan because of how the oceans are, and they need a deep channel where you could block it off. The other that comes through Malaysia from Iran. Iran is shockingly changing too.
Yeah.
The whole power dynamic of the world has shifted.
Yeah.
About 10% of China's oil came from Iran. About 70% came from Venezuela. And the balance coming from Russia. Well, they're still going to get Russian oil because the Russians have to sell.
Right.
But if we turned the spigot back on, we brought in American companies and our technology and brought back to life those jobs, those possibilities, because Venezuela was the richest country until socialism.
Right.
Everything can change. And now all of a sudden our back door is safe. Why are we allowing Iran, Russia, China all on our back door?
Right. I agree. Another notation on Venezuela. They were the wealthiest South American country
By far.
by far, and mostly because of their own GDP. They were able to produce a lot, sell. So that was that private market that was providing.
And it wasn't just oil. They also have a lot of mining.
They do. They still do.
Mhm.
But what they didn't have was a Bible-based constitution. They didn't have a First and Second Amendment that held that type of government at bay.
Interesting that it's not just enough that you can say something against your government. You also said something about, what was that second thing?
Yeah, the right to bear arms.
Showing the guns, huh?
Well, yeah, the pistols. But when you don't have that, look how easily it transitioned. I mean, it happened overnight. We're just going to elect this guy, and then boom, you're done. So New York's going to go through a difficult...
Well, they had about four decent years before all the infrastructure started falling apart and the corruption started happening. In other words, it took about 4 years for them to spend all of other people's money.
I know what you mean, to start to really feel the effect.
Right.
Yeah, I get that part. For those who were watchmen at the time and who lived there and were seeing it, they knew this is going south now. And some of them got out.
Well, I know a fair number of Venezuelans that live in Fresno County. Yeah. They're first-generation Americans. Yep. They're conservative. They're patriots. They're Christian. And they're so excited that, they're almost walking on water now.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, but so back to home, if we're not careful, even with our biblical foundation constitution, we are seeing power structures take over cities. Our own state is run by a socialist pig. Gavin Newsom, for those of you who don't know, we're in California.
Yeah.
And well, where's the resistance?
You're looking at part of it.
Right. We're here. We're not done.
We're not done, and if we get voter ID, that begins to plug up the hole. I believe they have used a system that allows for easy cheating. Yeah. And Jimmy Carter, liberal president Jimmy Carter agrees with me. He said, voter ID is essential, and universal mail-in balloting is one of the greatest threats to democracy.
Yeah. Well, except we're not a democracy, but that's what a Democrat would say.
Yeah.
So on the, are you ready to shift to some positive stuff?
Yes, because we're down to 3 minutes or a little less.
We better shift. Okay. So I've been mentoring and coming into contact with young people, as you know, and I am absolutely blown away with their hunger to know history and desire to learn the Constitution. And you were seeing it too. I know you do the Constitutionalist class. And there is a growing interest in American citizens relearning, or maybe learning, the Constitution. And so we're getting back to our roots. We're seeing it. It's a spiritual movement that's happening. So it's encouraging. And I'm seeing it in young people. I mean, I'm mentoring a 12-year-old whose favorite class in school is history. What 12-year-old says that? Okay, well, you were nerdy that way, though. But that's why you are where you are. Right? But we need more nerds like that. We need that hunger to come back for knowing who we are and why we got here and where we go from now. So,
or we could just erase history like the communists did.
Yeah, there's the problem. You can't erase it if you know it, right?
Right.
So the fact that we're getting back to it and we're starting to throw away the liberal mindset is a good thing. We're going in the right direction.
Well, it's easy for people to find it online. Hillsdale College, Constitution 101.
So easy. Right.
Constitution is the Solution, John Birch Society. PragerU has all kinds of Constitution classes.
Wall Builders, Patriot Academy.
Amen, brother.
Constitutionalist Podcast.
Well, we do what we can. I'm definitely left hopeful. We've had some huge breakthroughs. Looks like medical freedom might actually be a thing again.
Yay. That's a whole nother subject.
That's a whole other subject, and we don't have time to get into it. But, folks, there's absolutely hope. Can you lead us out with about a 15, 20-second prayer?
Oh, I would love to. Father, I just thank you for our time and for listening ears, that they would hear your word, your passion, your desire that we would be a righteous nation again. Let Americans respond with a love for the Constitution and our history and respond correctly. Keep that hunger alive in us, Lord, in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen.
This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist. Go out there and grab your destiny. This country's full of opportunity, even with the insanity that's going. Have a great day. We'll see you next week. Darn it, I forgot the one thing. Okay, so I'll tell you since I've tormented you on this.
The one thing.
The one thing. So, two gay ladies who are friends with